Okay, so if you turn to page 41, there's 3 problems I want to go over with you. If you look at number 1, you notice I said you should always solve radical equations by isolating the radical. Well, what do you do when there's 2 different radicals? Well, in this case, it's pretty easy because it's set up where there's 2 different radicals and they're on opposite sides. So all you have to do in this case is square both sides. When you square both sides, you get 3x minus 3 equals 2x plus 8. Subtract 2x from both sides, add 3 to both sides, and you get x equals 11. And remember, we always have to check and make sure none of the answers are extraneous. So let me check and make sure 11 works. And this is 22 plus 8 is root 30. And this is 33 minus 3 is root 30, and root 30 does equal root 30, so this works, and this is correct, and there's no extraneous solutions. Okay, now let's look at number 2. Number 2 is the square root of 2x squared minus 121 equals x. Okay, now here there are variables on both sides, but there's only one radical, and the radical itself is isolated. So we don't worry about getting the x's on the same side yet. First, we square both sides. So I get 2x squared minus 121 equals x squared. Now here, I subtract x squared from both sides, and I get x squared minus 121 equals 0. I do the difference of squares, and I get x plus 11, x minus 11 equals 0. I end up with an answer of negative 11 and 11. Now, I'm going to check both of these answers to make sure that they work. Now, I'm telling you, I have a suspicion one of these will not work, and I'll tell you why, and this is something you look for. When you have a variable that's not under the radical and a variable that is under the radical, a lot of times that sets up a situation where you might end up with an extraneous solution. So if I put negative 11 in here, negative 11 squared is 121, times 2 is 242, minus 121 is the square root of 121. Now here, 11, positive 11 works because this ends up being 11, whether it's negative 11 or positive 11. And 11 does equal 11, but 11 will never equal negative 11. So here, when we know this side's going to be negative, we know the positive square root of a number can never be negative. So in this particular case, our extraneous solution is negative 11. Now, let me show you something else interesting about this problem. Some of you might do it this way. You might square both sides so you get 2x squared minus 121 equals x squared. Then you might say, okay, I'm going to subtract x squared from both sides, and I'm going to add 121, to the other side. So now I'm going to square root both sides, and I get x equals, and you're going to say positive 11. Now, this is an example here where if you had x squared equals 121, this is an example of, now, did the textbook or I or anybody else write the square root sign for you? No. Who's deciding to square root both sides? You are. Well, when you, as a responsible math student, decide to square root both sides, you are responsible for finding both the positive and negative square root. Okay, nobody gave you the radical. You decided to square root both sides, and in that case, you have to come up with 2 answers. Now, what happens on some of these problems and on quizzes that I give, people accidentally only get positive 11, and they put positive 11, but they don't get both answers and then tell me this is extraneous. You are still responsible for finding both answers. Just because you get lucky and you didn't find the extraneous answer doesn't mean you'll get full credit. So remember, when you decide to square root both sides, okay, no square roots. Why are there square roots? Because I am making a decision to square root both sides. I must find both the positive and negative. Okay, now this last problem is much more complicated. Now, this is much more complicated because I have a radical here and a radical here, but there's an extra number. So I can't isolate the radical and just square it so it goes away. So what I have to do is I have to square both sides, and this is where it gets complicated. This is not just 2 squared and negative root x plus 1 squared. No, I have to FOIL it. So now I have to FOIL with radicals. And if you don't remember to FOIL, this and this cancels out. You will be wrong. So now 2 times 2 is 4, minus 2 root x plus 1, minus 2 root x plus 1, plus x plus 1 equals x plus 3. Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times negative x root 1 is negative 2 root x plus 1. This becomes negative 2 root x plus 1. Now, root x plus 1 times root x plus 1 just becomes x plus 1. So now this becomes 4 minus 4 root x plus 1 equals x plus 1, sorry, this is plus, x plus 1 equals x plus 3. Now I'm going to combine like terms. 4 and 1 is 5. So I get x plus 5 minus 4 root x plus 1 equals x plus 3. I'm going to subtract x from both sides. That goes away. And then I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I get negative 4 root x plus 1 equals negative 2. Now I'm going to divide this by negative 4 and this by negative 4. And I get root x plus 1 equals 1/2. Okay, I'm still not done. But because I'm running out of room, I'm going to erase this. And so we're at this point now. Root x plus 1 equals 1/2. So now I square both sides. And I get x plus 1 equals 1/2 times 1/2, 1/4. And I subtract 1, and my answer is negative 3/4. Now, if you plug this in, it works. I'm not going, just trust me that it works. And so that one was pretty tricky. So, things you have to remember. So, for number 3, when you have a number and a radical set equal to a radical, you're going to end up FOILing a number and a radical. There's no way around it. For number 1, when you have a radical equaling a radical, you square both sides. Had I had a radical minus a radical equals 0, I would add the radical to both sides and then square both sides. In a situation like this, don't FOIL. And then also remember, if you end up with a situation like this, you are responsible for finding both the positive and negative square root. Okay, so what I want everyone to do now is you're going to turn to page 42, and you're going to do, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like there's 5 problems there I want you to do. They are I can't tell what the numbers are. But do the problems on the next page. Sorry, I think there might only be 4. Anyway, do the problems on page 42. Stop the video and do them. Actually, we're going to end this video, and on the next video, you'll see the answers to page 42.